Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Antony.
And this is Words and Numbers. Brought to you by CACI, the Center for American Culture and Ideas. Well, Ant, what's new and exciting in your world this week?
I had an eye-opening experience this weekend. I was taking part in a discussion session. Maybe session's a wrong word. This was a 2-day event, multiple sessions. I wasn't part of the discussion, but I was leading it, so facilitating it. And in the room were a bunch of students, college through graduate level, discussing things like we discuss here. It have to do with economics, politics, government. Interestingly, none of the students was an economics major. They were all coming from either liberal arts or political science. Public policy was as close as they got to economics. But what was interesting is that this group was exclusively right-leaning students and a decent number of far-right-leaning students. So an extremely conservative group, much more so than we're used to dealing with. Coming from academia, I've dealt extensively with people on the left and the far left who are intellectuals and have heard intellectual arguments for leftist policies. This was the first time I dealt with people on the far right who also brought that kind of intellectual firepower to the discussion. And it was interesting because what scared me here, if scared is the right word, is that I came to see very little difference between those on the far right and those on the far left. For example, the students on the far right want to impose their morality on the rest of the country, outlaw pornography, recreational drugs, gay marriage, things like this, right? And they want to impose their morality because they know that morality is objective truth, and they know that they have perceived these moral tenets correctly. Now, one may argue whether they have or haven't, but the fact is they have come to their conclusions using whatever their starting point is, their starting assumptions and reason, and they believe they've found the truth, and this truth should be imposed on everyone else. I came away with this idea that, I've seen people on the left, they're less apt to use words like morality, they'll use words like equity, and those on the left will tend not to claim that truth is objective, rather the reverse. I'll tend more often not to claim that truth is subjective, except, and this is the weird thing, in being convinced that truth is subjective for everyone, people on the left are really stating their belief in objective truth. So both sides are believing here that they have on their side objective truth, whatever it is with a capital T, and good intention. And so I'm left with this view of the United States in which we have on the far right people who know that they have the truth on their side, and the key to a better society is forcing that truth on unenlightened wrong thinkers. And on the far left, we have people who know that they have the truth on their side, and the key to a better society is forcing that truth on unenlightened wrong thinkers. And as I observe this, it occurs to me there's no reconciliation possible here. The wisdom of a limited government is that it allows two irreconcilable groups like this to coexist peacefully. That is, if you have a limited government, those on the far left, you go live life the way you want to. Those on the far right, you go live life the way you want to, and you don't have to come to any agreement here on what is truth and objectiveness and all of this stuff. You just do your own thing. And all of this sheds new light for me on the growing rift in this country between the left and the right. I think it's not so much that the two sides disagree on what constitutes a healthy society. It's that neither side is satisfied to live life as they see fit. Each feels compelled to force their view of the world on the other side who's living life differently. Here I quote the first sentence of the second paragraph in our first founding document. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. To be created equal means, among other things, that none of us has the right to impose our will on others. So here we have this great and sad similarity between the far left and the far right. It seems that neither believes that all people are created equal.
Well, if you want to take the founders seriously, and I think we should, this constant talk of two sides that you're guilty of and that everybody's guilty of is a bunch of nonsense, right? Why on earth would there be two sides, Let me really think about that for a second. Do you think there are simply two different perspectives on everything in the world and you fit neatly into one side or the other?
No, I'm not saying there are two sides. I'm saying there are these two sides.
Nonetheless, you say it a lot, right? And you and everybody else makes it seem like there are, in fact, two sides. But the founders never would have seen it that way. They would have said, well, in a pluralistic society, you will have many sides.
Mm-hmm.
And they will all contest each other in the public space for preeminence. So the key is not to allow any of them to get very far. And the way you do that, the first way you do that, is to take any number of things off the table.
Right.
So we have a constitution that limits government authority. There are all kinds of things government can't legitimately do. And then we have a Bill of Rights, which guarantees rights to human beings on the virtue of their humanity, period. By the time you're done, if you read the words honestly and proceed forward, there's almost nothing that the federal government can do. And yet, as that government has become infinitely more powerful over the years, we have retreated to two corners, and we have fought each other that way. And the more powerful it gets, the more we will be on two sides.
And I gave to these young people the same warning I have given repeatedly to young people on the far left. And that is, look, you have in your mind that if we can just get control of government, we can impose our vision of the healthy society on everybody, and the world will be just a wonderful place. And my warning in both cases is, yeah, but to do that, you have to give government much more power than it has. At some point in the future, be it 4 years or 8 years or 12 years or 16 years, the other side's going to get hold of that power and not only undo everything that you want, but then go even further in the opposite direction.
It's probably going to be more like 4 years.
Yeah.
You and I have looked into this very seriously. And look, I'm a political scientist. I've spent my whole life studying politics. And I can tell you politics is not as important as culture. And if you want to affect a change at the cultural level. It will manifest in the politics.
Yeah, and you've said that to me before, and I actually repeated those words to these students because they kept giving the impression they thought, well, if we could just tweak the laws correctly, we can change people's behavior. I said, no, it's the other way around. It's people's behavior that determine the laws. It's the people's behavior you need to change, or in your words, the culture.
Everybody who wants to get in control of government, all right, go ahead. Not going to do you much good.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a little more what's going on in the Middle East, because there was an ominous thing that hit the news today. The sailors on the USS Gerald Ford, the biggest warship in the history of the human race, I believe, at least the biggest in the United States fleet, were given a steak and lobster dinner yesterday, which is very unusual. And apparently it only happens under one of two circumstances. Number one, a national holiday. Number two, as the harbinger of terrible news. I don't know if this is correct. I don't know if they actually got this dinner. I got the story off Twitter from an account that I follow called, let me make sure I get it exactly right. Oh, well, if I'm going to get it exactly right, I got it off X, formerly known as Twitter.
Right.
From an account called OSINT Defender, Open Source Intelligence Monitor, focused on Europe and conflicts around the world. So, open source intelligence. They're the ones who said it. Now, after they reported it, some in the media picked it up, and it's gotten some legs. Has anybody been able to verify it? That's kind of opaque in the stories. So I tried, and I've failed thus far. Nonetheless, I think it's interesting that here on Sunday afternoon, I'm talking about dinner on Saturday night on a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Middle East as a likely sign that things are about to get very ugly over there. And as I say this, the Chinese are sending battle groups into the Mediterranean.
Well, you're saying this is the fascinating thing about modern technology. You're saying this. I hadn't heard it. I just typed it into Google, and I'm seeing the various things. Also, yeah, I'm not seeing any original source here. It seems everybody's repeating something that someone else has said.
Well, the original source is the tweet by OSINT.
I missed that. Is it presumably someone who's stationed on the Gerald Ford?
They don't say exactly where they got that information. We'll all find out what the hell's going on. And my guess is that people will know on Wednesday when this episode hits. The Foolishness is a weird one. It comes from a guy named Mike Tonks, who sent me an email that said, I don't know if this qualifies as new and exciting or the foolishness of the week. And I took a look at it, and I'm not sure I can't tell which of the two things it is. And you probably saw this email and probably know what I'm talking about, but it's down here in my neck of the woods, in Phoenix, where a guy has decided what he needs to do is build a new kind of neighborhood, one that's wholly walkable, that people will have no cars. It's called cul-de-sac. It's built on a 17-acre site, and it's supposed to be a perfectly integrated neighborhood with no parking spaces.
I did see that, yes.
Now, I hear no parking spaces, and for me, no sale. I'm not sure that I ever want to live in a neighborhood that's wholly integrated with all of the stuff of life in the buildings that you're living in, right? So you go into the main lobby and there's your grocery store and this kind of nonsense. You know what I like? I like privacy, and I like quiet, and I like being away from all that kind of nonsense. I guess my separatist urge is not going to ever yield the condition in which I will want to live in a neighborhood like cul-de-sac, and yet maybe people do. As stupid as I think this is, and make no mistake, I think this is really stupid. As stupid as I think this is, well, that's not really for me to decide, is it? It's for the people to decide who may or may not move into these units. Now, we're building one here in Tucson as well, which makes this a little more interesting for me, and they leveled one of the local shopping malls to get the space for it. And they're building it in the middle of a pretty big, wide open space. And it's not going to be on this model. It's going to be a place where you can live, and there will be stuff in the buildings, and it will be a self-contained neighborhood if you want, but there will be parking spaces, which means that other people can go and shop at those stores.
Right.
Now, in the cul-de-sac model, the only patrons you will get are the people who live in the building.
So basically, they're trying to form a closed economy.
That's right. It's a kibbutz.
Yeah, that's not going to work. It barely works at the national level.
That's right. And they are going to have a very small parking lot for visitors, which doesn't sound to me like you're going to want to go patronize businesses there. In Phoenix, you can get a self-driving cab to bring you over. But why the hell would you do that when you can get in your own car and go anywhere else and do whatever you want?
Yeah.
So I have grave reservations. I don't think this is going to work even for a second. We'll return to this. I'll put it on the calendar and we'll return to it.
Yeah. I'd like to see what happens. But this is the beauty of markets. Let's try it out. We're used to seeing things in markets that succeed, but there are a greater number of things that fail. They just don't rise as high on people's radar.
Way more.
I share your thoughts. I think this is going to be one that fails, but let's see.
I think this is going to be an unmitigated flop, but I've been wrong before. I'll put it on the calendar. We'll get back to this. And hey, maybe we can get the founder on to talk about it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be
that
interesting?
would be fun.
His name is Ryan Johnson. He's the CEO of Cul-de-sac. You can read about him in the story that we'll put in the show notes for you.
And let me underline something here. I'm talking about this thing likely failing, and we complain about government endeavors that fail as well. We're much more tolerant of market failures. The reason is when a market phenomenon fails, the people who are hurt are the people who chose to be involved in it, either as customers or employees or as investors. When a government enterprise fails, all manner of people who had no choice in the matter are involved in it.
Well, and that's right. And when a government endeavor fails, what happens? We just pour more money into it. When a private endeavor fails,
Right.
it goes
We
out of
shut
business.
it down. We do the rational thing and stop doing it.
We don't do it. The people who are on the hook for it do, right?
Right.
And that's just the thing. In a business endeavor, somebody is on the hook. Somebody says early on that I will bet my life savings that I can make this work.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever says that with a government project?
Right.
A government project definitionally says, I got an idea. Let's spend everybody else's money on it and see what happens. Well, a lot of time it doesn't quite work out. And there it is. So thanks a lot, Mike Tonks. I couldn't figure out whether this was the quick hit or the foolishness on my side of the equation either. I think it drifts more towards foolishness, but it is fascinating. So who the hell knows? I kind of want to drive down to Tempe and just walk around and see what this place looks like.
We give a special shout out to our Patreon sponsors who help us keep the lights on. If you'd like to contribute, go to patreon.com/wordsandnumbers. For one-stop shopping for all things James and Ant, visit our website, wordsandnumbers.org.
We're here to talk this week about a thing that I would have swore we would never talk about. When I told Ant that this is what I wanted to talk about this week, he said, I don't know who that is.
James told me this an hour and a half ago, and that was my reaction. I'm never going to talk about that.
I was at Faulkner University in Montgomery, Alabama, and Jason Jewell, who works there, had me in an interview, and he said, I want to talk about Taylor Swift. I started thinking about it, and okay, this is something actually worth talking about, because I had remembered a story, Best Buy said last week that they anticipated an earnings downturn because of what they called the Taylor Swift effect.
What? People stop spending there to spend on Taylor Swift tickets?
That is the right question and the correct answer. It goes a little further than that. And I bet as a father of relatively young people, this will ring true with you as well. Youngish people, so not just teenagers, but even people into their late 20s, are spending less money on stuff and more money on experiences. Mm-hmm. And this is something my children say all the time. We don't want stuff every year. What do you want for Christmas? We don't want stuff. We like doing things. This is what extraordinarily wealthy people in a post-scarcity society sometimes will say, in what appears to be a post-scarcity society. We'd talk about that another day. But certainly scarcity doesn't rear its ugly head into our lives all that often. Yep. We could say, well, I'd rather go someplace. I would rather do something than have a thing. Me, I'd rather kind of have a thing because I don't know when all this material wealth is going to dry up. And then you don't get anything. But nonetheless, a company as big as Best Buy was able to say, look, we're probably going to take a hit because of Taylor Swift and Taylor Swift alone, although Taylor Swift is glomming on to something in the zeitgeist, right? She's figured out how to capitalize on something that's out there as a force already. And how well does she capitalize? Well, come to find out, extraordinarily well. Her recent Eras tour, 146 dates across 5 countries, with $2.2 billion in ticket sales in North America alone. You gotta be kidding me. 72,000 spectators per concert in the U.S. 72,000 per. 13 million in U.S. ticket sales per night. When you add in all of the related spending, right, when you get the spending that goes along with the tour, so you're thinking about all the travel, all the meals, all the hotels, the clothing that people buy, in order to wear on their special night when they go to the show. The ticket sales, too. When you add it all together, it's a $5.7 billion pop to the United States economy. If Best Buy is right, it's not all a pop, though, is it? Because it's money that comes away from certain things.
Oh, yeah, I would say it's not a pop at all.
Certainly it's a pop at all, right? Because she's added something to the list of possibilities that wasn't there a year ago that is there now. It's a brand new thing. It's an innovation of a sort, and people want to go to this new thing.
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction. There is a big pop here, but it's not in the dollars, and that's what people focus on. It's on the fact that there's this new product out here that people like much better than the products that were out there in front of them before.
Or the dollars they were going to put in the bank.
Or they were going to save. The pop is on the people's side, that all of a sudden they're receiving more of something better, something different. But yeah, in terms of the dollars, they're going to spend more dollars here. They're going to spend less dollars on Best Buy. But the dollars don't matter. What matters is that they're getting something.
Taylor Swift being the very shrewd businesswoman that she is, and she is very, very shrewd, realized that even though she was raking it in hand over fist on the tour, not all of her fans could afford to go. These are in far-flung places for a lot of people. They're very expensive. So what does she do? She makes a movie of what? The concert. She has to do zero extra work.
Right.
Now, she has to hire some people to film the movie, and the tour movie has $100 million in global pre-sales. In its first 4 days, think about this. In its first 4 days, it catapulted to the top of the movie list and made more money than the next 50 movies combined.
I love this story, largely for the contrast that I'm going to throw out here. people are going to look at this and say, how wonderful for her. She's doing something to help the people who couldn't afford to pay the $1,300 for the in-person ticket. Now they spend $10 for the movie ticket or whatever it is. And we applaud her for that. And well, we should. But airlines do the exact same thing, and we get mad about it. They charge a high price for first-class tickets and a discounted price for the economy tickets. And we bitch and moan about the economy tickets, but that's exactly what Taylor Swift just did. In economics, we call it price discrimination. You're making it possible for the lower-income people to afford some version of this product, partly on the backs of the higher-income people who are paying the premium price. Let me throw out another contrast here. People are looking at this and likely saying, at least from the tenor of the article that you sent me, this is a great thing. Look at Taylor Swift is contributing all of this extra economic growth, the X $2 billion or whatever it is, and people are applauding her. But who do we vilify? We vilify people like Jeff Bezos with Amazon. And Amazon does the same thing that Taylor Swift is doing. It provides a product that people like better than the other products that they're consuming, and so they spend some money on it. And if you want to make a comparison here, we're making a big deal about Taylor Swift and her $2 billion per year generating of economic activity. That's on the order of less than 1/100th of Amazon's annual contributions to economic activity. And yet somehow Amazon's evil, but Taylor Swift is great.
It was 5.7 billion, but I think the ratio holds. I think it is
1 to 100.
1%. That's interesting, isn't it? And it's also interesting that you insist on saying Jeff Bezos over and over and over again, who hasn't been the CEO of Amazon for quite some time. And yet, for some reason, yeah, that's right. Who is?
Yeah, I don't recall.
You looked it up not more than 20 minutes ago.
I know.
We've both forgotten already.
See, it's a name that nobody recognizes, right? It's some guy.
And it doesn't matter. He's not the product.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Swift is the product, so people care in a way that they don't really when they look at Amazon. Everybody talks about Jeff Bezos and his wealth. I don't remember when he stopped running Amazon, but it's been a while now. You should probably leave him be. Right now it's somebody else. And the federal government is still being unloosed upon Amazon. They refer to Amazon as a monopoly, and now they're dragging Amazon into court and various other pogroms that the federal government has. I mean, who in his right mind thinks Amazon is a monopoly?
One of the things that people are going to say in response is, yeah, but Amazon's not just one person. And I pick out Jeff Bezos because you said, Taylor Swift is a product. Jeff Bezos, this was his brainchild. So in a lot of ways, Amazon is to Jeff Bezos as Taylor Swift is to Taylor Swift Inc. But nonetheless, people will say, yeah, but Amazon's not just the one guy, the CEO or the Jeff Bezos, whoever it is. It's all of the people who work in the factories and do the advertising, the marketing, the accounting. Yeah, but that's the same thing with Taylor Swift, right?
That's right.
Otherwise, she's just somebody singing a song out in the wilderness.
It takes thousands of people to put these shows on.
Yeah.
These are gigantic stadium shows. And she made headlines not terribly long ago when at the culmination of the tour, she gave bonuses to her truck drivers, $100,000 each.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the kind of boss you want to work for, come to find out, right? And she got all kinds of great press for that, as well she should have. I think that was a great thing to do. Does Amazon give any bonuses to its drivers? No. Well, it's a different kind of concern ongoing as opposed to the Taylor Swift tour, which is a discrete thing that takes a certain amount of time and then is over. Mm-hmm. So, does it make sense? Well, one's a publicly traded company, one isn't. Can you give away that kind of money in a publicly traded company without running afoul of your shareholders? I suspect not. Mm-hmm. There are all kinds of perfectly good reasons why one can do this and the other can't. There are also any number of good reasons to say it's a laudable thing for one and not so smart for the other. Nonetheless, it shows difference. There are differences here, and those differences are meaningful.
Yeah, but notice when you talk about the differences, you've got to go down into the weeds. What you cannot do is just at the surface level say Taylor Swift equals good, Amazon equals bad. They're of the same type of animal. I think the big difference is people understand what Taylor Swift does. They can see, oh yeah, I see her value add. We don't see that for Mr. whoever it is that's CEO of Amazon.
But here's a great way to start, right? The reason why you can't really say a whole lot until you get into the weeds is because you're free to walk away from either one of them. You don't have to give Taylor Swift a dime, nor do you have to give Amazon a dime. The United States government keeps saying over and over and over again that Amazon is a monopoly. How so exactly? What can't you get elsewhere that you can only get from Amazon?
Right.
And the only thing I can think of are the TV shows that Amazon presents as its own.
Yes, that they create themselves, yeah.
Amazon original TV shows. That doesn't make them a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
That just means you can't get certain shows anywhere else, because that's true already off the top of my head. Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Showtime / Paramount,
Well,
and on and on and on and on.
to draw the parallel further, the only place you can get Taylor Swift music is Taylor Swift. So why isn't she a monopoly?
She's more of one.
More of one than Amazon is.
If that's true, then literally every one of us is a monopoly, and therefore we all must be put out of business.
But the point is, she produces her specific thing, which is Taylor Swift. Amazon produces its specific thing. And although I can't go anywhere except Taylor Swift to hear Taylor Swift, and I can't go anywhere other than Amazon to see Amazon's videos, I can go plenty of other places to hear other music and to see other videos. So I don't see the monopoly argument here.
You're not materially affected.
Right, right.
It's not like you have one company from which you can buy your electricity, and they can charge whatever they want. That's the problem with monopoly.
Yep.
A, you can't walk away, and because you can't walk away, B, they can charge whatever they want. Neither of those things is true in either of these cases.
Yeah, and let's underline this, because this is really important. You describe a monopoly by saying you can't walk away. People tend to describe monopolies not that way. They tend to describe them as big. Amazon's a monopoly because it's big. But hang on. There are two ways to get big. One is that you prevent people from walking away. They can't walk away. The other is that you do such a good job, they don't want to walk away. They come to you.
That's right.
That's how Amazon got big. It offered such a good product. People said, yes, I want this. And to go to your point, at any point, when Amazon stops offering quality, people are going to say, thank you, I'm gone. They're going to go buy somewhere else.
Take my ass right over to Walmart,
Yep.
which is also not a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
All of the hand waving to the contrary. I can't think of a single monopoly in the United States right now, can you?
No, I can't. And I want to underline here, I find young kids today, by young kids, I mean college kids, they tend to look at me quizzically when I refer to Walmart as quote-unquote monopoly. They don't think of it as monopoly anymore. Now, 20 years ago, when people said monopoly, they thought Walmart.
That's right.
Why do they no longer think that? Because Amazon came along and did such a better job that we said, see you later, Walmart. We went to Amazon.
And we've talked about Amazon already showing the signs of its own destruction.
Yep.
So something will come along next if Amazon doesn't get it together. I don't know who or what that's going to be, but it's going to be something or someone. Taylor Swift adds $5.7 billion to the U.S. economy. And give the numbers. What do both Apple and Amazon add?
Amazon's, I believe, last year, $580 billion. So right at 100 times.
100 times.
And Apple, I believe, is 380, just under 400 billion.
These are just two that we picked at random.
Right. Oh, well, James asked me, show me a U.S. corporation that has $5.8 billion in revenue, just like Taylor Swift. I couldn't find one because the top 100 lists don't even come close to $5.8 billion. The bottom of the top 500 list is Travelers Insurance at roughly $40 billion.
And not only that, it's hard to find lists that do.
Yeah, I'd have to go search company by company, asking what is their revenue.
A company with $5.7 billion in revenue wouldn't be considered, or $2.2 billion if you were only going to look at ticket revenues and things like this. A company of that size wouldn't be considered a small business by any stretch.
It would not be considered a large... Oh, right, yeah. But nor is it a big business, yeah.
But it's nowhere near a large business.
Yeah.
It's not even in the same zip code.
Yeah.
Careful about the sorts of conclusions you draw when you hear these numbers. Because I heard some breathless analysis that the Taylor Swift tour was going to have a positive impact on the U.S. GDP.
Yeah, no, The U.S. GDP, all right, wait, I got to break out my calculator here. Taylor Swift is all in, you said roughly, what, $5.8 billion?
5.7 billion was the estimate.
That is 3/100ths of 1% of the U.S. economy. 3/100ths of 1%.
So it will have an effect
Yes.
on GDP.
But negligible.
Not the gigantic effect that people would have you believe, but an effect nonetheless. And as music tours go, I don't think there's ever been one that was nearly as successful as this.
Let me throw out as well. So Taylor Swift all in $5.8 billion over the course of the year, effect on U.S. economy. Last time I looked, and the last time I looked was maybe 5 years ago, the federal government spent that much every 10 hours.
I guess that's probably the last thing we're going to say about this, isn't it?
I never thought I'd do an episode on Taylor Swift. This was great.
It was great, and we should, think about things like her a lot more often. Because it's interesting when you do, how much people will think about her in the terms that we're very familiar with, yet they won't apply those same thoughts to anything else. But hopefully this will open up some eyes and they'll start thinking a little more broadly about economic things. And that's all the time we've got this week on Words and Numbers. Until next time, be sure to follow us on Twitter. Handles are in the show notes. Join Words and Numbers Backstage, the Facebook group where the conversation continues, and
send us email, wordsandnumberspodcast@gmail.com.
Until next week, try to be nice to one person who doesn't deserve it. Just one. And who knows, it may turn into a trend. Give it a shot. You might feel good about yourself.
You could say you tried.
You tried, that's right. Till next week, can't take it easy.
See you next week, James.